For me to be tasked with making this painting of John Hume is a great privilege for me personally, as an artist, but as a human being having grown up in this place. It's never lost on me the gravity and the importance that this painting will have to not just now but in the many years to come. I'm aware of the task. Paintings can be daunting at times, but I really hope that this will give everybody else this particular quite affectionate view of John Hume that I have held throughout my life. He always seemed to make sense. He always seemed to, as a human being, say the things that I as a human being understood. Killing was wrong. Destruction was wrong. The way to achieve an aim is through purely political and through purely peaceful means. That's what John Hume was appealing for all along. The best way to achieve what you want to achieve is through talking, is through an understanding of everybody else's point of view, through an acknowledgement that some people can have as deeply held opposite views to you. But to achieve those things totally peacefully. And John Hume, I think, sacrificed a huge amount personally to set us on the road as a society to being able to achieve those things politically. Of course, we have a very long way to go in this place. In some ways, we're really just scratching the surface of our past. For this new painting, although it is posthumously made, I don't see it as a posthumous painting. I'm using all my source material that I used for the original painting of John, just making a different painting. And so the drawings are back out again, the photographs are back out again, and it's almost like making a portrait of somebody who is still alive. I suppose the actual painting, the actual pose, if we can call it that, although nothing was posed, was a moment of clarity for me. John adjusting his glasses, getting the focus right in order to engage me. Now what that does in turn is it gives the viewer of the painting, it affords them that same intimate view of John. I loved the metaphorical aspect of him adjusting his view, remaining as focused as it was possible to be, because that for me is the memory I have of John Hume as well. Here was somebody who had a single-minded, completely focused ambition for peace in this place, and that seemed so appropriate in making this painting. It's very important to me that if I'm painting someone, that I meet and spend time with them. During the time that we spend together, sometimes mostly 2 or 3 hours, I'll be making frantically these shorthand drawings, is what I call them, where I'm basically studying how the face works as we talk about happy things, sad things. Just seeing how that person's face works. It's important that they don't sit still. The camera's there as well, and so photography is an important record of the event. But what I never do is become a slave to the photography. The drawings are in fact more important. I'm trapping what's important to me. The eyes. How those eyes work whenever we're talking about something. The creases in the eyes, the creases in the flesh, where those are, that the camera doesn't necessarily pick up. I'm trapping the spirit of the time we spent together. Working from all of my drawings all over the studio floor and some of the photography on laptops, and all of that comes together to build the final painting. I suppose the reason why I don't really use photography on its own is that, how often have we looked at a beautiful view or looked at a stunning sunset, we photograph it, we come back and we look at it and go, well, that doesn't capture anything of the experience. A photograph of a person can often be like that as well. So it's very important that I use the whole experience, the whole spirit of the time that we spent together, and build that into the painting. The planning drawing for the painting is very important. In that way, I can check that I'm getting the likeness right, and I can check that the proportions are correct on a smaller scale. The paintings are much bigger than life size, so it's important that it's on a reasonably intimate scale that I'm checking that. I'll often square the drawing up, put a grid onto it, grid up the canvas, and transfer the drawing onto the canvas to start off with. And then I sort of attack the canvas in the way that I would do any painting. It starts off with a spontaneous bunch of paint marks, where I know where the eyes are going to be, I know where the nose and the mouth are going to be, I know because I've plotted those out, but I'm using those as guides. And then after I've done that, maybe spent a day, I'll set the painting aside and work on something else, and then set that painting aside and work on something else, and maybe after 2 weeks I'll come back to the portrait, bring it back onto the easel again, and I'll then just start to build the painting from there on top of those loose spontaneous marks. I spent more time on the eyes, I suppose, because I figure that that's how we engage. I direct people's attention to the eyes, and whenever we're looking at one of my portraits, my hope is that people will see it as a way in to engage with the person. People assume, I think, that when you paint in this quite thick, expressive, sculptural, spontaneous way, that you're better with a very coarse, textured calmness. I find the opposite to be true. I love having a smooth surface to start with as I can. meant to build on top of that, to allow the paint to be the only thing that is really seen. The Michael Harding paints which I use are all handmade, and they're made in, I suppose, the really traditional way. They're as colour fast as it's possible to be, and from a textural point of view, they're just right for me as well. I can almost sculpt with the paint. Of course, with paintings, you use paintbrushes, you use palette knives, you use hands at times. I can carve into the paintings with crayon, and it's just whatever feels right at the time. I haven't historically been a fan of large, huge canvases depicting the human face, but something about painting a portrait for the first time, really for the sake of doing it, made me want to do it larger than life size. This is about 12 years ago. And what it does is it gives us as the viewer, and also me as the artist, the opportunity for the human face to become something else. If we're looking at the human face at life size, we're seeing a human face. If you're seeing a human face 4 times, 5 times bigger, you're engaging with something else. And that's what I want my paintings to be. I want people to find themselves in them. I want people to see landscape if they want to see it, because sometimes the way that the paint is treated in the faces is reminiscent of landscape. And essentially there's a self-indulgent aspect from my point of view in it, where you set out to make a painting. The primary reason of getting into the studio is to put paint on a bit of cloth. Sometimes the human face is the way through to do it. It's the vehicle through which you do it. You use the human face to make the painting. So all of those things factor in as to why the portraits are the size they are. It's a real privilege to have the painting here now. Of course, whenever it's in the studio, it's a bit of cloth with some paint put onto it. Whereas when it gets here and it's in the frame and it's been unveiled, there's a sense that it's a work of art now. Something which has left the studio and has a life of its own. It's for people to engage with. It's for people to fill in the gaps that I've left and find themselves in it. But what I hope that they get from it is what I remember about John Hume, having grown up in Belfast through the dark days. John's voice of peace, consistently driving for peace. The first painting I made, which is now in a private collection, was an introspective view of John. This is an altogether different painting. What I hope with this painting is that there's a certain timeless aspect to it. Here's John at a certain point in his career, but also here's John the whole way through his career, and his view of the place that he loved best. He's not consumed with him, he's consumed with us, with everybody else. And I love the idea that people might be able to get the idea that John was a man who was interested in everybody else. I haven't really thought what John would make of this. In some ways, if I'm doing my job right, there'd be an element of the portrait where the sitter is uncomfortable. There's an element of me excavating, seeing behind the facade, trying to get to see the real person behind the facade. And we all have that. Every human being on the planet, I believe, has a facade which we impose on ourselves. I look forward to coming back and becoming reacquainted with John's gaze again.